Hello. So the big summer preview show is just around the corner, literally tomorrow. So I wanted to just put out sort of a prediction video, just having a little look at what's been advertised so far and what I think is going to be coming. So the first thing advertised is Warhammer 40,000, of course. I think this is going to be the one that's going to be the biggest sort of focus here. Surprise, surprise. I know recently we've had all the Horus Heresy releases. So I think this is the one, this is going to be the one of Warhammer 40,000. It's going to be the headliner. And what do I think we're going to see? So my predictions. So I'm going to tell you what my predictions are, but then I'm also going to tell you what I want. So my wants are probably going to be very outlandish and not going to show up at all, but it's what I want. It's not what I think is going to happen, it's what I want to see. But the predictions is what I genuinely think we're going to see. So I do think that we're going to obviously see multiple things. I do reckon the main headliners that I've got written down that I think we're going to see is, I think, with the release of the Horus Heresy stuff, the Salamanders and the Iron Warriors were a focus there. They're in the new main advertisements in this new starter set. Well, obviously you can paint them any way you want, but it's kind of been advertised as the Salamanders versus the Iron, Warriors. So I think it kind of makes sense for us to get some new models for both of those factions, so Salamanders and the Iron Warriors in 40k, to sort of coincide with that. I think it kind of makes sense. We're very late into 10th edition now. That group of things that we haven't seen yet is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the Salamanders is one of those that hasn't really received much love. So I do think that we're probably going to see them, or something, maybe even just one sort of unit of them, or a named character or something. But I do think Salamanders and the Iron Warriors is what we will probably end up seeing something of. I also think that looking at what we haven't seen yet from 40k, Xenos, the list of Xenos, which is small enough as it is anyway, is getting ever smaller. So I do think it is now time. We're going to have to see the Drukhari at this point. Otherwise, we're just not going to see them this edition, really. So I think we're going to be getting the announcement for the new codex, as well as, some new models to go alongside that. And then the last sort of big thing that I think we're going to also see from the 40k side of things is the Leagues of Votan as well. They obviously need a codex release as well for this edition. I know they had a novel last year and stuff like that. I don't know how popular they are. They don't sort of strike me as one of the more popular sort of factions, but nonetheless, they're one of the last sort of Xenos, if they even class as Xenos, armies left that need sort of, a little bit of an update. A couple of models chucked in, I guess, is what they might get, and the new codex. What I want to see, most of you probably know that I'm currently working on the Blood Ravens lore video at the moment, and because I've been working on Blood Ravens, my head is literally filled with Blood Ravens at the moment, and so that is what I want to see. I've got to a point now where I'm like, the next army I'm going to build is probably going to be a Blood Ravens one. The release of Dawn of War coming up. I know they've got the Dawn of War tie-in board game being released alongside the remaster, but I would like to see, that's what I want to see. I don't think we will, but I want to see some new Blood Ravens sort of miniatures. Gabriel Angelos figure, yes please. Even just that on its own, I'd be happy with, actually, to be fair. But I very much doubt that. But speaking of wants and stuff as well, I do think the successor chapters and stuff like that really, we haven't seen a lot of them at all this edition. And so I would like to see, I'd be happy just to see any that's not Black Templars, any other sort of successor chapter getting a little bit more love, really. Poor Crimson Fists, they're one of the sort of, the OGs of the setting. I think even they deserve a little bit more love than they get. I know they just released that new Ultramarines miniature that looks a little bit like Pedro Cantor, but I think that's more just how the painting's been done rather than the model itself. So next on the list, we've got Age of Sigmar and Underworlds, which, I do want to get into that at some point. I used to, back in the old sort of OG Warhammer days, I used to really absolutely love Lizard Men. Like Lizard Men, I was into Lizard Men before even 40k. And I've kind of drifted away from that. I was in and out of the hobby. And then when I've come back to it, so I've always sort of gravitated back towards 40k. Age of Sigmar has never it's never, I don't want to say not appealed to me, because it has appealed to me. I get that it's a successor to classic Warhammer, and I do like that. But because it's a successor, I also feel like, oh, it's a whole brand new world that I've now got to learn about. Whereas I used to kind of know about classic Warhammer stuff, but because that's no longer there, and they've got this sequel, I'm just like, well, I may as well go to what I know, which is Warhammer 40,000. So I've always just gravitated back towards that. But it is on my list to get back into it at some point. I do want to give Age of Sigmar a go, because I know the lizard men, I think they're called the Seraphon now. You know, they are there. I'll be going straight towards them. But it's I've got enough 40k on my plate at the moment to be looking at anything else. Moving straight on from that, in the same kind of vein really, is Warhammer the Old World. Now this, Warhammer the Old World, it appeals to me more than the Age of Sigmar. I know this is technically a prequel to Warhammer Classic, but there's just something about, it feels very, even though it's a new game or a separate game, it still has that nostalgia factor to me. You know, I like the square bases, I like that kind of modular sort of gameplay. While I haven't engaged in the Old World yet, I like the look of it, and it is something that I think I'd probably go towards Old World before I went to Age of Sigmar. In fact, I'll get onto that, because my predictions for the Old World is, I think, and I'm probably wrong about this, but I think, thinking about things from a sort of a Games Workshop perspective and what's going to sell, to me it's going to be Skaven. And I know that Old World is sort of a prequel, and I'm not 100% sure on how the timelines work, but I know the Skaven aren't really a thing yet. Or if they are, they're not the kind of the threat that they grow into later on. But even though I do think the Skaven were still about, so you could still get away with doing a Skaven army in Old World and making it feel like it belongs there. Whatever lore you feed us around why the Skaven are in the Old World, people are just going to accept it, I think. They're just going to be happy to be able to play with these old Skaven sort of miniatures and stuff like that. So I do predict that's what we'll see, because I also think they would sell. There's a reason that they are one of the headliners, if not the headliner, for Age of Sigmar and their own video games and stuff like that with Skaven Tide. They're a popular faction, and from what I understand, they also won Warhammer, so it would make sense to see them again, and they would sell. What do I want? Well, as I've just said, what I would want, and what would get me to buy Old World straight away, would be a Lizard Men box. If they release Lizard Men in the Old World, I will be getting it. That will just draw me straight into that. And like I said, there's a lot of nostalgia around that style of miniature for me. And so I've jumped straight back in to engage with that, get back to painting hordes of skinks, which I know are still in Age of Sigmar. And from what I've seen as well, the skinks that they've got in Age of Sigmar are identical to the ones that were in Warhammer Classic, actually. So I don't know how that would work. And again, I know the timeline thing as well. The lizard men are still on their island. They've not come in to fight everybody on the mainland or whatever, you know, that sort of stuff. But still, they're still there. You can still say, you know, exploratory sort of expeditions have begun, and there's been, you know, a few skirmishes and stuff like that. But that's what I would want to see, because I would buy that in a heartbeat. Next, we've got the Legions Imperialis, which is again another sort of game system that doesn't really appeal to me. I don't really engage with it that much at all. I don't really know that much about it either, or how it's played. I know what it is and stuff like that, but it's again one of those things that I'm not entirely clued up on about to even give a decent prediction. And as for what I would want to see from it, again, I don't play it, and unfortunately I'm not really going to sort of get into that, I don't think. So I don't really have a want for it either. Next up, the Warhammer, the Horus Heresy. So obviously that's just had a load of new releases. That's just got a new box set. Pretty much the last reveal show sort of thing was all about Horus Heresy. That was the headliner for that one. I think this one is going to be the 40k headliner. We've had so many Horus Heresy releases. I can't see them offering up something massive in this one. Prediction-wise, I think we're probably just going to get a few named characters. I think that would be quite interesting. I think that's something that people want to see as well in that game, is they want to see a few named characters, particularly in these more unrepresented legions, such as the Salamanders and the Iron Warriors, who, despite being the main releases for this new edition, you still haven't really got any sort of named characters for them. You've got your Primarchs, but that's really it. It would be good to get a little bit more named representation in not just these legions, but the other legions that are kind of always sort of pushed to the side as well. You know, you've got your headliners, you've got your Ultramarines and your Dark Angels and your Blood Angels, but the Salamanders need some love as well. They deserve it in both 40k and Horus Heresy. What do I want to see? What do I want to see? Again, bringing back to this, what I want to see, and I don't think we will see it, is I want to see a new Perturabo figure. I don't know, just a new Perturabo figure. I know we're not going to get Demon Primarch Perturabo, but the next step in Perturabo. So we've got a Perturabo. I'd next like to see his in-between version, his we'll call him Siege of Terror Perturabo, is what I would like to see. Siege of Terror Perturabo, and then after Siege of Terror Perturabo, I would like to see 40k Perturabo, Demon Primarch Perturabo, down the line whenever they decide to give us to him. Give him to us, not us to him. And so next up on the list, we've got Kill Team. So I'm a little bit biased or corrupted on this one, mainly because I've heard so much rumours and things about Kill Team that my prediction is kind of now been skewed towards the popular opinion, because it does kind of make sense. There's a lot of people have been going on about the Death Watch getting their own kill team. So I know that it's become increasingly difficult to use them in this edition and play them because they haven't got their codex supplement and that sort of stuff. And their rules have kind of been merged into other codexes rather than giving them their own standalone sort of set of rules. So it would be nice and it would work to sort of get their own kill team. I think alongside that, I'll say alongside that, I don't know. So I was going to say it'd be good to see Cassius again. Part of me is like, I don't want him involved in the kill team. I'd like to get him as a standalone figure. But then actually, in the past, it was kill team Cassius anyway, wasn't it? Who knows? That's what I think. I do think we'll see Deathwatch kill team because they are still very much in the mind of Games Workshop. We saw in Space Marine 2, you open up in the Deathwatch. So they're still very much at the forefront of the mind. I do think that we will get some miniatures to do with that, and kill team makes sense. What do I want to see? I would like to see Thousand Suns one, definitely. I know they've technically kind of already got one that you can make just out of your Rubric Marines. That's not the same. I want a dedicated kill team to the Thousand Suns. I want all the interesting models that you can get with the interesting, unique models from kill teams are usually the best things about them. So I'd love to see a Thousand Suns one in no matter what form that sort of takes. But equally, I think more than that, what I think would be really interesting is to get a Fallen kill team. You're never going to get Fallen as a full army. There's obviously a lore reason for that. Not enough of them for a start. But you could make a really good kill team for the Fallen that could work as traitor or even technically kind of loyalist, inner circle champion kind of vibe. It's a kill team that can work in so many different ways, and it would give us a really good set of models for the Fallen that we haven't got in the past. Not just Cypher, but a full, that there's so much variation there in the Fallen. You've got corrupted version, some are corrupted, some are not. I think it would make for a really interesting kill team. And then you could even include an updated Cypher model in there, really, if you wanted to as well, and make it sort of a Cypher kill team. Not sure if they would do that, but I would like to see a new model of Cypher, so I'd be up for it. But that's what I kind of think. That's what I want. Not what I think is going to happen. That's what I want to happen. I think the only place we'll ever see a unit of the Fallen would be kill team, because the only place really it would make sense for them to appear, because not all of them are aligned with the traitor forces. So the last thing, which is a sort of a new addition to the announcement picture, is the Black Library. And this is really interesting as well. Obviously, I love the books. I'm doing my Law and Order series I'm working through at the moment. That will take me another 15 years. But I'm also aware that the two main series that they've got have just sort of finished as well, haven't they? So you've just had the last Siege of Terror book with the anthology, Era of Ruin. And then you've just had the Silent King book as well, which is kind of tying up the Dawn of Fire series as far as I'm aware. So what do I think we'll see? I think we'll see an announcement for the Scouring series. That's obviously the logical next step. We've had the Siege of Terror. There is so many stories to tell around the Scouring. It just makes sense. There are so many good stories. We've got the Iron Cage. I'm really, really interested in that story. And the most important one for me as well is the Lion's Return to Caliban. I really want to read that book and see how it's told in that story, because obviously we always get, well, we're told these things in the codexes and stuff like that about the history and what happened during these events. The books always add their own little spins on them, and they give us new information and new ways to look at it as well. So I would really, that's what I want to see as well. Is I know that's probably the most logical step, is they're going to be the scouring, but that's what I want as well with that. And then the other thing I think we're going to get, I think we're going to get a release date and an official announcement, an official release date for this Pandemonium book. We've been waiting for it for a long time now. I think there's a reason that obviously people have been told they've got to keep a lot of information about it shush shush. And I think that's because they've been keeping it for a moment like this. It makes sense. It's finished. It's ready to go. It would be not a showstopper, but it would be something to really kind of like get people's mouths watering, is to finally give us some solid release date on that, or even maybe a little, teaser, a blurb for it or something like that. I think this would be a good time to kind of release that. That's my prediction. What do I want to see? What do I want is I want them to announce a book that finally confirms a meeting between Lion and Guilliman in 40k. It is long overdue. The stories surrounding the Lion have just, they've disappeared, which is really disappointing. I kind of, considering we've only got 2 Primarchs in 40k back, 2 Loyalist Primarchs in 40k, you would think that they would be more involved in the main sort of stories going on. And I know Guilliman's in the Dawn of Fire series, and that's his, he pops up in there and stuff like that, and headlines a couple of stories and things. But the Lion is just we're getting nothing about him. They've brought him back. They made all this thing about bringing him back, and he's appeared in what, 1 or 2 books, I think. Lion, Son of the Forest, the Arcs of Omen books, or whatever, but they're not Black Library sort of novels, and that's surprising because it's a Primarch, and those books sold really well, and it's one of the most sort of the biggest narrative things to happen. So I don't know. It just boggles my mind that it hasn't happened yet, and they're not really using both Guilliman and the Lion to their full potential here to really move this narrative and really bring in some engaging big epic stories surrounding these big epic characters. So they've got them there. To use them, to not use them, I don't know. It's like they don't want our money, and we know that's not true. It's crazy. But that's what I want. I want to finally have a confirmation that these two are going to get the brotherly hug that they so deserve. And that's it, really. That's all I can think of for the sort of my predictions for what's going to be, what we're going to see. I'm really excited to see it tomorrow. I'm going to be watching for sure live. I'm not going to be streaming it because I'm a bit thick and I haven't worked out live streaming yet. And when I have tried live streaming, I've not done it correctly, or I've mucked it up. So I'm I'm not mucking about with that at the moment. I've got my hands full with this sort of, my videos going on at the moment anyway. The Blood Ravens one, I'm still working on that. I've finished the next story for Law and Order. I do want to get the Blood Ravens video out next, but at this point I'm also like, well, I've already read. I'm already fully prepped for the next Law and Order video. Whereas the Blood Raven one, I've still got more research to do. So one of those 2 will be coming next in regards to lore videos from myself. But yeah, I hope everybody enjoys the big reveal show tomorrow. Hopefully we're going to get some good stuff. If not, there's always the Christmas one that I'm sure they'll do. Okay, right. Well, thank you for watching this, and I hope everybody has a good time watching tomorrow, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.